Welcome to Nintendo Ninja News, and it's a Nintendo Historia video, and we're talking about modern times. History, the times that we live in is also part of history as well. And we're doing the Wii U Autopsy in terms of now that the Wii U is finally coming towards an end. We get to have a little bit of a look back at really from a business point of view. What went right, what went wrong, and my own personal thoughts. So it's not going to be something where we talk about, oh, these were awesome games and things like that. That would be more for my own personal stuff later on. But this is a bit grubby. But as you can tell, the Wii U, an interesting concept, very much the same. And even its design, even this console design was probably not particularly great in terms of that. So, we thought we would talk about what went wrong for the Wii U, and of course, the list is quite long, and sadly, what went right was pretty short. So, part of the problem, the first thing was the name of it, the Wii U. Trying to continue the Wii era when the Wii console itself was selling very poorly didn't help at all. And it was not a great idea. Whoever came up with the name, that is the most terrible name I've ever heard. Calling it the Wii 2 could have been better. But horrible, horrible name. I don't know, whoever thought of that. Looking back at its launch trailer was another thing that went down for them. It looked confusing in retrospect, where probably during launch time we were, overly excited about a new console. It had this gamepad thing. What was it going to do? New gameplay experiences. Well, it ended up being a very confusing trailer as it showed off the Wii remotes, the balance board, and all these accessories and the Wii that you couldn't actually buy with the Wii U, and people thought you could just buy this gamepad as a new add-on, which is another issue that the Wii U had. Problem number 3 was people thought that the gamepad was an add-on, and it wasn't. It never was. Even to today, people get confused about that and try to sort of, people try to explain to them, oh no, it's a whole new console, and people just didn't know about. The marketing of the Wii U was also very poor too. The marketing didn't last as long, and it wasn't nowhere near as strong as what we've seen for the Nintendo Switch or for the Nintendo Wii when it was out now 11 years ago. And when you look at all the things that kept on failing for them, it was just so many different things. It was almost like the opposite of a perfect storm. That was the Wii. This was just a complete disaster. Everything sort of fell apart. So, which was very, very sad to see. The lack of third-party games. People kept away from the Wii U in droves. There was some decent support at first from Ubisoft, but after that, games dried up pretty hard, and that was a very difficult thing for Nintendo to deal with, and they couldn't do much themselves, which leads on to the drought of first-party games. It was another issue for them, and you would have to wait every few months or 4-6 months for the next Nintendo game to come out. And it was a long time between those periods. And for every good Smash Brothers or Mario Kart or Splatoon, there was these big, long droughts, which caused it to have a lot of problems. And that was a big issue for them. And another big problem, I guess, for that. Now, the other problem was Nintendo was not able to really create any good experiences with the gamepad. There was a couple games that did okay, Splatoon and Super Mario Maker, which seems to be the games that used it the most. But pretty much nearly all the games on the Wii U could not really understand or figure out what good gameplay mechanics would be with a tablet. And that was another blocking issue too, is had to work with an underpowered console that had a tablet attached to it, and most of them didn't really want to do it. That was another issue for that too. Was how underpowered it was, and still using the architect of from the GameCube era, you know, and then they kept that same one for the Wii U era, and then I moved it on to the Wii U era in the HD time. So it was a very, very tough period, you know. The limited operating system, you know, when it first launched, you had to do a huge day one patch, and the loading on it to, you know, go in and out of, you know, games and eShops and that took so long. It took nearly 40 seconds to a minute to change between screens and that on that operating system. It was horrendous. Nowadays it runs quite nicely, but at launch time they were not prepared at all. They were rushing this thing out to replace the Wii, and the gamepad came out in a time and era where tablets were more advanced, that could do more stuff, and the gamepad just looked very amateurish. And I think it does look like it even more when you compare it to the Nintendo Switch. It looks like a very, very slick product and quite expensive. It feels good. It's not super expensive, but it's good quality. Good quality. But, you know, looking at this little history lesson and looking at all these things, these weren't small problems. These were really damning issues. You know, the launch trailer failed. The third-party games weren't there. The big third-party games I'm talking about. No GTA 5, no Assassin's Creeds, or all of them. No Tomb Raiders, none of those big games, or Skyrim on it, or anything like that. We waited years for Minecraft to come. That should have been one of the games to be out on launch and bundled together. The droughts of Nintendo games struggling between the Wii U and the 3DS. No experiences from the gamepad. It was underpowered. The operating system was down. The online services was slowly improving. It was the opposite of the Wii, and it was just a very, very bad storm to be in for the last few years. And I think with Nintendo now, their thinking is, we hope that the storm ends from March the 3rd next month. And this is where we're taking our history lesson, is in this last month. We know that Breath of the Wild will come, and it might help sell off the last batch of Wii U consoles. But for it to sell only just under 14 million units is quite appalling, and it is Nintendo's worst selling home console. Of course, the Virtual Boy deserves the number one, but for hardware wise, that's where the marketing and the hardware was where Nintendo completely collapsed, and it really did suffer. And you do need to have decent third-party content in order to have a good console that can sell well. But it's such a shame. I won't say much about what I thought about the Wii U, because that's in another video. But it had decent potential. And it's probably a good thing that some of these games are getting ported to the Switch, because they do deserve a second chance. A lot of those games do. Check out my other Wii U Autopsy videos and my personal thoughts on what went right for the console. And tell us in the comments about what you think, how the Wii U went. I'll see you next time.